Welcome, ELCA Youth Ministry Network friends. Good to have you with us today at our Oasis event, welcoming Prairie Rose Seminole with us. Oasis, this place in between, this time of rest and rejuvenation, of connection between our extravaganza events and other events that are offered in between. So good to have you with us this morning, this afternoon. If you want to share in the chat where you're joining us from, that'd be fantastic. This morning, all kinds of stuff going on here. While Prairie Rose is doing her presentation, if you want to throw your questions in the chat, we'll be monitoring those for you while we're doing that. So let us begin with a moment of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time together. We thank you for the oases you provide in your creation. We give thanks for the time of connection with one another, and just open our hearts and minds to hear the good news that you have for us, that you have for all of your children. And we give thanks for the ministry of all our youth coordinators, youth pastors, all those who love your children. We pray this in your holy name. Amen. And I'll throw it over to our fearless leader, Todd.
Good to see everybody here today. Thanks for being a part of this this conversation, and thanks to Prairie Rose for being with us today. Also, we're very honored to have you here. Just a couple of things I want to highlight and remind people about. First of all, the extravaganza planning team is hard at work. Lots of details are coming together. Speakers are being assembled. Musicians are being assembled. We're getting all the details put together. I really encourage you to visit the extravaganza website, ext26.org. There's information there. The extravaganza will be held in St. Louis, right next to the arch. The hotel is literally just right in the shadow of the arch, right on the river. It's a beautiful spot. January 30th to February 2nd, 2026. We're very excited about that and the information that is coming together for speakers and all that good stuff. So plan on that. Registration will open for the extravaganza on August 1st this year. So look forward to that. Also, if you're not subscribed to Third Tuesday Conversation, the network's monthly podcast, we encourage you to do that. They just released a new episode yesterday about confirmation ministry. It's a good dynamic conversation. I encourage you to be a part of that. Also, the Connect Journal, we continue to release articles every other month as well. We've got some good stuff coming out. Make sure you watch for that. You can also subscribe to those pieces so they'll come directly to your inbox. And then lastly, Martin's List, just a reminder that we continue to post up resources to Martin's List. Anybody who's a Network Plus member has access to that resource. There's over 500 different resources there. Everything from Bible studies to retreat curriculum to games and activities, some around seasonal stuff, some just general things. There's just really good stuff there. So if you're looking for a resource, we encourage you to go there and to do a quick search for it. You can save it by nailing it to the wall, and then it'll be there for you when you go back as well. Also, really encourage you to post things that you put together. If there's resources that you've created or written or outlined, we have this sense sometimes that the stuff we do, oh, nobody else would want to use that, or that's not that great. Trust me, it really is. And we all adapt whatever we take. So if someone can get a head start on some planning, by looking at something you've written and they can adapt it for their context, it's just a wonderful gift. And that's what we do as a network together as we support each other in this work. So really encourage you to post up things that you create there and to share them with your colleagues and friends in the network. That's how we support each other in the work that we do. Those are the things I wanted to highlight and mention. But again, just thanks to all of you for being here, for being a part of the network, for doing the things that you do. Your work is really important. You are a part of the work of the Spirit in transforming lives, and we're thankful for that. Stacy, back to you.
Thanks, Todd. Well, it's my honor and pleasure to welcome Prairie Rose Seminole to the Oasis. She is an enrolled member of the MHA Nation of North Dakota and a dedicated advocate for Indigenous rights, cultural preservation, and storytelling, with extensive experience building relationships in Indigenous communities. Prairie Rose works at the intersection of advocacy, arts, and healing. Welcome, Prairie Rose. We are so happy to have you.
Hey everyone, and for those of you who are at Extravaganza, you'll be happy to note I have a voice. I know last time any of you heard from me, uh, I was speechless most of the time, but let me see if I can share my screen here. I don't know if I can here. And Todd, please disregard my panicked voicemail to you regarding the link for today's event. We are here, I'm live, and I'm really grateful to be a part of this gathering with you all. I'm not sure I can share my screen. Let's see here. Oh wait, okay, I found it. Let's see here. I have to click on there it is. Let's try this again. Here we go. Can everybody see that? Let me get into
Yes, we
presentation
can. Thank you.
mode. Perfect. Are you seeing the slides or are you seeing the presenter mode?
We're seeing the slides, although you can hit F11 to go full screen because we're also seeing all your other open tabs.
Oh, yeah. Let's see here. I don't have an F11 on my laptop. Let's see here. I can get to
If you
full
move your
screen.
mouse over, there might be something that lets you choose full screen, but it's not a big deal. It's fine.
Let's see here. Well, yeah, we might have to leave it at that here.
Probably that three-dot menu to the top right next to the Copilot logo. If you click on that, you might be able to choose full screen
Mm,
somewhere. I don't know.
I have a new laptop, so this is
Oh
all.
yeah, it's the diagonal arrows there by Zoom on the
Oh,
fourth line down. I think
thank
try
you.
clicking that.
Oh, appreciate tech
There you
support.
go.
Awesome. All
That's why
right.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prairie Rose.
We're doing this together, walking together in truth, and sometimes that means tech support. But today we're talking about Indigenous justice, some of the work with the ELCA, and we'll also talk about missing and murdered Indigenous women. And this is one piece that I'm heavily involved in within my area. And just so you know, I'm on the ancestral and present-day lands of the Mandan Hidatsa-Rikra Nation in White Shield, North Dakota, within the broader homelands of the Oceti-Sakowin. The trade routes and the economy here was around trade. And when we were dying off of smallpox and influenza and war, the Oceti-Sakowin peoples had come in, Lakota, Dakota, Yankton folks who'd come in. So these lands along the Missouri River have always been a place of exchange of goods, ideas, innovation. And for generations, people came here to trade, to share new fashions, new tools, new visions for how to live well together. And in that same spirit, we come together together today to share ideas, to connect with one another, and to imagine what good governance can and should look like. Even within the church, we look at that. So I want to talk to all of these things that speak within our daily lives, the decisions we make, our communities, literally the air we breathe and the quality of water we drink is all decisions that we can make individually and collectively and move that and seed up, if you will, into the halls of government and into our churches. So in the spirit of place, I want to reclaim that practice of gathering with purpose and vision and move forward together. Really grateful to be here. A little bit more about me. I am the former program director of the American Indian Alaska Native Ministries within the ELCA, which is an office that no longer exists after restructuring in 2020. But I left that year to pursue things at home. I had lost my brother and became a steward of land out here in Western North Dakota and his herd of horses, which I've now grown to 11 horses. It's incredible to be out on the land and slowing things down a little bit more. My passions are food sovereignty, um, and really educating others about the beauty of our homelands here and our connectedness to one another. I come from a big family. My home was very multicultural growing up. My mom is German from Russia, which is a very specific cultural category. Um, they were Lutherans, I think, before they even knew Lutheran Church had a name, moving to Russia prior to the Reformation. Um, and my dad was a full-blooded American Indian, Northern Cheyenne, and Rikra, Dakota. I'm a twin. Uh, my mom's 6 children are listed here, but my dad together had 14 children with a previous marriage as well. And there's only 7 of us left. So it's telling to live out in Western North Dakota when I moved to a zip code where the life expectancy was about 20 years um, less than where I was living. So that's a little terrifying, and a lot of different factors play into that. Our mortality, right? Our access to healthcare, our access to food, our access to, quality of life, and the privileges that come with being able to provide and those pieces. This lower picture is from Wounded Knee. My dad is in this picture. I know it's pretty small, but I'm going to show you, well, hopefully show you a video clip where this comes from with the documentary that the ELCA funded quite a few years ago now. And they had funded the American Indian movements, not just occupations, but the movement itself and the outreach that they did in providing schools, housing programs, shelter programs, healthcare programs across the country. And what you didn't see were a lot of the women leadership organizing that across the country. But you might have heard some of the headlines, which we'll get into later. But there's 3 guys or excuse me, 2 gentlemen on top of the roof. One, his name's Mike, and I don't know the name of the other one. And Meteor Blades, that's Mike. Couldn't remember the gentleman's name, and he's passed on since, so I don't have very many people to ask. But those are 2 Lutherans that were at the occupation of Wounded Knee in 1973. So, um, I'll just put this all up here. So this is official within the ELCA. What does it mean to be a witness? And this might seem dated, but Vance Blackfox, the director of Indigenous tribal relations within the ELCA, has updated some of these pieces. But this is still in the documentation that we have when we're working with American Indian Alaska Native tribes. It's about the accompaniment and being a witness, and really working closely with the over 30 Native congregations around the country, and opening new faith communities as well. But that's my goal working with American Indian Alaska Native communities was just really strengthening uh, their affiliation to the Lutheran Church and educating them around what it means to be Lutheran. Because if you understand our history, church, capital C, didn't come into Indian country in the best way, right? With the best intentions. And the Lutherans were a little behind on getting some of the land and the contracts with the federal government to run boarding schools, etc. We'll get into that too. But the reality is that we say we are a witness of the gospel with American Indian and Alaska Native people, and that history has more than 350 years in this land, which is true. We were there among the Cherokee as they walked the Trail of Tears, and we continue to be there in Alaska as many of the larger denominations, faith organizations like the Presbyterians, Catholics, even the Jesuits had kind of let go of the ministries that they started, whether it was funding, leadership changes, or just kind of forgot that that's happened, unfortunately. One person knew that a ministry started and we lost them, and then there was no relationship with church, right? So the Lutherans actually picked up some of those ministries along the way. Let me see if I can open my chat here too. But I'm curious what folks see, whoops, when they look at this document. Or you can come off mute and say, because I don't think I can open my chat without stopping my screen share. What do you see in this image?
I can help share the questions that pop up in the chat too.
Thanks, Stacy. Just curious, it's not a right or wrong, no shame or blame here. What do you see in this photo?
Definitely looking down
Mhm.
upon, looking down upon.
I
Like
see a
there's
handshake that doesn't necessarily look like it's the result of something good.
What else are we seeing?
Manuel shared dominance.
Mhm.
Victoria says, I first noticed the standing/sitting positions.
Yeah. Oh, this is a picture of Red Cloud, Chief Red Cloud. Excuse me. And one of the Indian agents at the time, whose name escapes me, who was doing some land deals. And what this picture really represents is two cultures coming together and acting according to their culture, right? So for a lot of Native tribes, mine included, direct eye contact was saved only for the most intimate relations. Um, your family, your loved ones, those intimate relations that you establish along your life. It wasn't meant for just anybody, right? It was an intimate access to you and your being to have direct eye contact. And as you greet visitors, in some cultures, in some tribes, like the Lakota Dakota, it was customary to be seated to greet them, right? And when you look at what we look at dominant culture today, direct eye contact, firm handshake, standing, right? And so these two people are acting accordingly to their culture at the time. Now, when you don't see and you don't land in a space of agreement and alignment, even physical alignment, how well do you think our communication, our well-being, our shared future is going to be after those moments, right? So you can tell that a lot of times, even now, dominant culture exists to move an agenda have a timeline, right? Not take the time of moving at the speed of relationship building, at the speed of coming into alignment and understanding one another, right? So I share this photo because we can kind of see, like, here's two cultures coming together at the end of the 1800s and acting accordingly to their culture, but the future, the shared future that they put forward was clearly not in alignment. Oops. So, what does it mean to be in relationship? This is what we've written as the ELCA. Relationships with American Indians and Alaska Natives in the ELCA are firmly grounded in reconciliation and the mutual building up of the saints. Together, we work with a common vision to proclaim the good news of Jesus Christ, share in the ministry of word and sacrament, participate in God's work of reconciliation in the world and creation, seek justice for all people, and celebrate diversity with Christ's unifying love. In our shared work, we strive to nurture and uphold the dignity of American Indian and Alaska Native people, their congregations, communities, and church. Now, this document was written in the late 1990s. I think it was 1997, 1998, around that time frame. And we felt really good about these words, right? We felt really good about these words. We felt really good about the relationships that we were establishing, because at this time, we had over 40 American Indian Alaska Native ministries within the ELCA at the time. And we had probably about a half a dozen that the ELCA started themselves. My home congregation in Fargo Moorhead was one of those ministries. Started with ELCA funding, started in accompaniment with the ELCA as a new ministry, and it maintained that for well over a decade and continues to be in some relationship with community, but it's transformed so much because of leadership and relationships and access to funding, and access to relationships with other congregations, right? So these pieces um, are starting, like, a point of accountability. Like, are we doing this as a church? Are we doing this with our young people? I used to joke that I've not been confirmed yet within the Lutheran Church, even though I went through confirmation. There was some sort of scandal with our youth director at the time. Uh, I don't know, they took off. And then there was an illness with one of our pastors, and some of the students got confirmed at another congregation. And then I was actually sent off to boarding school. I went to the Wahpeton Indian School and missed out on being confirmed. Now, working with all the bishops at one point in my career, they said they could fix that problem, but I have a issue with writing sermon notes at this point in my life. So I'm not sure that will happen, but we'll see. We'll see. One of those days I might get confirmed. Um, but when it comes to the church within American Indian and Alaska Native communities, and even in urban areas in proximity to American Indian and Alaska Native communities, we still have to ask a question around, what does it mean to be in relationship, right? Because if we continue to move in with an agenda, with a timeline, and moving at the speed of what our goals should be, that's not being in right relationship, right? We want to be in right relationship. And some of our wording should uh, change to understand that we are not here to colonize anymore, right? And the language starts to say that. But I think what people need is kind of that how to and those next steps, and giving ourselves permission to not know the world that we're building, right? To give ourselves permission to have that grace, give ourselves grace, give each other grace in understanding we might not know how to be in a relationship, especially with those who've had such a different lived experience than our own. Um, it's a point of accountability to continue to ask ourselves these questions. Oh, in here I usually put some survey questions. Uh, and I don't have any prizes today because we're not a live event, but I suppose I could have prizes, but we all know who this is, I hope. So, how many synods in the ELCA? Anybody want to shout that out? 65. Did anybody say that? Oh, I have access to my chat. Awesome. There we go. Yeah.
I'll help you keep an eye on it.
Thank you. And Elizabeth Eaton is our current bishop. Oops. Apparently when I open that up, I can't do the slideshow. All right. So when I was growing up within the ELCA, um, uh, the Fargo-Moorhead Indian Center was the Fargo-Moorhead Native American Christian Ministry. And I heard all about the the Indian seizing Augustana and Sioux Falls, um, because we had a gentleman who was there, um, uh, who would tell us this story, and he's like, "Yeah, those white folks were always concerned about their agenda, so we decided we need to figure out our own agenda," and that's really what happened at that time. Um, Whoops, let me see if I can go back here. So this was happening around the time of the siege at Wounded Knee. And again, this is that same picture up on the roof. My dad is kind of in the second row, but there's other incredible leaders here: Russell Means, Dennis Banks, the Belcourt brothers. Clyde Belcourt was really involved with the Lutherans and their leadership as we established the National Indian Lutheran Board, which was founded in 1970 through the activities of um, several denominations. This is kind of one of the first times that the more conservative Lutheran denominations were working together. The American Lutheran Church, the Lutheran Church in America, Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, Association of Evangelical Lutheran Churches, um, really got involved to fund the National Indian Lutheran Board. And this was kind of the behind the scenes that you didn't see, right? Those of us who were not alive, right, during the 70s, I was born in the 80s myself, and there's probably some who were involved in our youth ministries who were born in the aughts, right, the 2000s, and which is still surreal to me. But we are all coexisting at this unique time, inheriting this work of all of these churches and denominations to really have an impact on the lives of the American Indian Alaska Native people. And this was one of those points of accountability. If we're going to be an accompaniment, if we're going to be not just a witness, but take action, like how do we do that? And this was pretty incredible at the time. Again, you didn't see a lot of the um, behind the scenes pieces on this because there was so many women uh, who were doing that work, who were organizers, and really putting that money to good use. Shelters, healthcare services, food programs, educational programs. I mean, we saw this in 2016 with the No DAPL and the Dakota Access Pipeline, right? They established a school, they established a food program, and a lot of our Lutheran ministries got involved with that. And even the ELCA put out a statement in support of, siding with the Indigenous peoples. So this is from the film too, but I have this photo somewhere. Um, I'm in this photo. This is actually the last meeting of the National Indian Lutheran Board, and you can see it's uh, mostly Indigenous people, a lot of our allies in accompaniment. Jean Crawford's in this photo. Marlene Helgamo, the late Marlene Helgamo is in this photo. My dad's also in this photo. I'm running around here somewhere. I thought I was in the front row at one point. No, I'm in the second row. You can't see me. And if you could see my mouse, I don't know if that I'm circling me, but I don't know if you could see my mouse. My brother's in here, my mom's in here. So many incredible leaders from that era came together in Fargo, North Dakota at one of our Indigenous ministries. And this was the last meeting of the National Indian Lutheran Board because we lost Gene Crawford in 1988. And I think this was 87, 86, 87. But I remember this gathering, running around the field house and meals and worship services and being a part of a truly multicultural church within the Lutheran faith. And I think that was such a rare opportunity to see how we bring ourselves into church as Indigenous people, under the same understanding of theology, unifying Christ's love, living our faith in action, and holding each other accountable to the work that needs to get done when it comes to bettering our lives and doing those pieces. So, um, outside of Germany, the United States has large population of Lutherans, followed by Ethiopia and Tanzania. It's true, but Tanzania is like fastly approaching that, just so you know. Um, Anybody know this one? The first year of the ELCA? Is it 81 or 80? I
Well,
can't cheat because what's in my notes on here.
it was chartered after that.
87 was guessed.
Yeah.
I think it's earlier than that.
Now you're thinking of the Commission for the New Lutheran Church was earlier, but the actual ELCA charter was 87.
87? All right.
That's what I thought.
Okay. We'll go into comment. I know we're hitting up on time. So, my first job as program director was actually as an organizer. When I was nominated for the position in 2015, I was very open about my background. I'm an organizer. I'm all about accountability. If you want someone like me in the position, it's going to be about relationships. And I really prided myself on that because the prior 10 years, really from like the mid 90s to, well, excuse me, the early mid 2000s to 2015, there were really just interim directors within my position. And so what does that do in relationship to ministries, right? A couple of things. One, the ministries don't have the same connection that they have with the church-wide organization. Many didn't have a strong relationship even within their synod, and there was nobody holding anybody accountable. And that's what I see in working within a native ministry. Like, here's our challenges. I work within two synods. I work within the church-wide structure. I'm constantly going to the church-wide organization to tell them, like, here's what we're dealing with um, as a community, and how do we build those relationships? As the association work, there's a separate association, American Indian Alaska Native Lutheran Association, that has had similar leadership for most of its time. And we decided that we wanted to repudiate the doctrine of discovery because our faith brothers and sisters have been doing that for the last decade. The Episcopals were some of the first, the Presbyterians, the Unitarians, the Catholic Church looked at it, right? The Mennonites are still asking the question, do we need to repudiate this if we're walking in accompaniment in a good way, right? Like, so there are all these conversations happening at a national level when we weren't having that conversation. So within a couple of years, we said, let's do this. And Bishop Guy Irwin and others wrote the repudiation of the doctrine of discovery. So you'll see that it's very academically written. Um, but so many people didn't know what the doctrine of discovery was, right? So my work within that first year, um, aside and working with our tribal communities and our American Indian Alaska Native churches, was educating dominant culture about the doctrine of discovery and what that is and how it's still playing a role in our relationships with Indigenous peoples. And I tell you, this got confrontational. There was a point in my position at Churchwide where I needed to have um, someone with me when I went to synod assemblies and when I went to different gatherings because there were several confrontations that the people were like literally in my face and very confrontational. Scary. It was scary. I tell you that um, people thought they had to give their land back. People thought if the church repudiated the doctrine of discovery that we were now asking you to speak our indigenous languages, right? Like there was just so many jumps to this radical piece, and I can joke about it now saying, yeah, I want land back. Yeah, you should speak my language. Yes, you should absolutely get rid of your violent tendencies as a colonial culture, right? Like, are they so radical for me to want to feel safe in my community, to feel safe when I travel, right? These are not radical ideas. This is who we are as Lutherans. This is who we are as Christians. And when we start to have the conversations about how it's rooted even within the language of our governance structures within church and with every other governance structure uh, addressing our lives, we start to move things, we start to change. And that's what I've appreciated about my relationship with the church, is that we are doing all these changes. I recommend you Google this, the Canaanites, Cowboys, and Indians. When we talk about Indigenous liberation and liberation theology, this is such a neat little article written in 1989, that kind of speaks to our Indigenous perspective, right? And then you start to ask the questions. I've done several workshops around this to speak to, what if we were building relationships with one another, right? Instead of this, here's our chosen land, now we can engage in genocide and violence and continue that relationship, right? What if we had a different lens? This is an older gathering, one of the last gatherings we actually had with the American Alaska Native Lutheran Ministries and our leaders. Some of these have passed on now, and I'm really grateful that we were able to kind of capture this moment, because this even in itself is historic. When you see from that National Native Lutheran Board to this event that was in 2019, I believe, or 2018, was one of those opportunities where we got to celebrate where we are and where we're going. I'm kind of going through things some a little bit quicker just because we started late and I'm late into my presentation. Even though we are writing all of these statements, because there's a lot of us within the Lutheran Church that have a very type A personality. I'm trying to let go of mine sometimes, but we kind of have to have things written so that we can give ourselves permission, right? But we also might need things pointed out to us because we don't know what we don't know, right? And so there's different pieces that allow us to have those conversations so that we can now um, uh, figure out how we play a role in the systems around us, whether those systems are oppressing others or those systems are lifting others up. Like, what is our role, right? So definitely check these out. These are all on the ELCA website. Now, we won't have time to show this film, but I'll send all the links to Stacy and Todd and everyone so that you can have all these links. But this is the documentary that was shown, whoops, that was done by the ELCA. And it kind of starts with that history around the American Indian movement and how Lutherans got involved, right? So I'll send this out to everybody and you can watch it at your own time. But it's a fascinating history. All right, how do I get back to my slideshow? There we go. See, Todd, there's a reason I have all my 8,000 tabs up. But some lessons that we got from the National Indian Lutheran Board. Community. Growing meaningful relationships with people in our communities based on shared values and common concerns. This is so beautiful and so simple, like being in right relationship with one another, moving at the speed of alignment and the speed of building that trust with one another. When you come in as a parachute church, a parachute organization, a parachute person, we're not building that same trust with you. And you're gonna feel that the relationship is not as genuine, right? Looking at the political leadership in the church, a structure that's determining who makes decisions, holding our church accountable. I mean, it'd be great to have Native people there. Lonnie Taylor was on the churchwide council for quite a few years, and I think she just termed out. But I'm not sure if there's anybody else, any Native person on churchwide council now. I haven't kept up with that news. But self-determination and meaningful policy. Policy was our vision, a clear agenda for a better world. And that's where we need kind of our church to show up. A lot of times it was, that's not my issue. MMIW, that's not my people. That's not my women. That's our community, though. How do we show up? How do we look um, and be in relationship with one another? So a couple of things that we can be really proud of as a Lutheran body at this time was that we helped pass meaningful legislation like the Indian Civil Rights Act, Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act, that ended boarding schools, right? That allowed us to educate our own children, right? The Indian Child Welfare Act. The Lutherans move from boarding schools into removal of our children, social services. South Dakota, Nebraska, and a few other states. I mean, the Lutheran social services was really, um, foundational in removing children, putting them in non-native families, which violated now the Indian Child Welfare Act, but continued assimilative practices, right? How do we keep families together? And again, the American Indian Religious Freedom Act, like that allowed us to practice our spirituality, our culture, our language, all under the bright, beautiful sunshine. After I throw that at you, Luther wanted to delete the books Esther, Hebrews, James, Jude, and Revelation. It's true. He felt some of these were a little too feminine and a little highlighted, um, and some were too poetic and just were not the concrete pieces that he wanted within the church. So there's more I can say on that. Um, Missing murdered Indigenous women. So again, this is an issue that touches uh, all of our Native lives. Let me look at time here. I know we're getting close here. Um, this piece is really dear to me. I grew up knowing that my aunt was murdered on a gravel road here in Western North Dakota, McLean County, and her murder was never investigated. Within a couple of years, her brothers, my uncles, one was left in a field to die, um, and considered died of exposure, but he was beaten and murdered out there. I had another uncle who was shot at the Minot Air Force Base as a member of the Air Force, uh, and his death clearly not a suicide, but it was coded as suicide. Um, and rumors at the time said that it was because he was dating a white woman who had dated another individual at the Air Force Base. And these are stories that you just kind of grow up with. But in my lived experience, losing my nieces who were beaten and left on doorsteps, and my nephew whose murder was also coded as suicide, but we stood up for him and his death, and it was clearly not a suicide. It's just a matter of law enforcement not having the capacity to pursue a homicide, right? And so they code it the easiest thing to just close it. But his murder is considered cold, and even losing my late brother. Those of you who are extravaganza in 2019, I had just lost my brother. And so I was very fortunate to be in community with you all at extravaganza in 2019 because you just held space for me and it was absolutely beautiful. But this violence that happens in our communities, one in three women, excuse me, um, will be murdered, right? Isn't that incredible? Like just because of my existence, I have a higher probability that my life will end in violence. Um, and we have to talk about that, right? And it's these colonial systems that we've inherited. I've recently become good friends with Jim Schmidt. I shouldn't say friends, we're colleagues. If those of you who don't know Jim Schmidt, he's the stepfather of Gabby Petito. And we've done some conferences together recently in the Southwest in Phoenix and Scottsdale, and then we'll be seeing each other later this fall. But we're in close communication now because I'm using some of his materials in proposals for our legislature. You know, how law enforcement should be asking better questions in case of intimate partner violence and situations, not just for Indigenous women, right, but any intimate partner violent situation. For many of our states, you should look into this, like North Dakota, intimate partner violence wasn't even a criminal issue until like the 80s, right? It was considered a civil issue, a civil matter, at a time when women barely got the right to have our autonomy, have credit cards and get a mortgage, right? Like, so this is relatively new that we just need to do better. And Jim, I really give him a lot of props. You know, he's this New Jersey firefighter guy who talks about how if he goes to bars or restaurants, or he was on vacation on a cruise recently, and he called out men who were um, uh, speaking about his daughter in a very sexual tone, and he called him out on it. He didn't know these guys. He said, that's not appropriate. That's my daughter. She's 13 years old, right? Like you know, are we holding each other accountable? Can we ask men to step in and like take a bigger stance, right? Like these are interesting conversations that we need to have. And when do we start to fold in men? And the reason why men haven't been folded in for so long is because we didn't feel safe. And in some spaces, it's going to be women only. It's going to be women and girls and those who identify as women only until we're comfortable with bringing a safe man in. So these are real conversations that we need to have. I'm the director, co-director of a short film, We Ride for Her, and I'll make sure that you have that link as well. That speaks to the crisis itself. I know some of you have seen this film, and thank you for supporting our work. We're just now in the process of actually pursuing a feature documentary film along the same storyline, because in the short, we couldn't follow the riders and tell their stories as deep as we wanted to. We talked about the crisis and really just put awareness out there. And this is one thing that the ELCA and the women of the ELCA have started to take a stronger role in. These resources, We Stand for Her, a resource for MMIW, and what is racial justice issues, that links you to some of the work that the women of the ELCA has been doing. But the ELCA has also been doing a lot of these pieces around awareness and advocacy and how you can show up in these pieces. So let's see here. I want to make sure we have a little room for questions here too. We can skip this one. But just know that really for Martin Luther, it was how God reveals himself through suffering and weakness, not through power and glory, and the cross is being the center of the church. You guys should know this stuff. Oh, this one's kind of fun. Um, I lost it now. It's okay, we'll keep going. So some questions to end with here. Why is it important to represent diverse and contemporary Indigenous voices and experiences? So that we feel seen and that we feel heard. There's kind of this expectation within the church too, that if you're Native and within the church that you have given yourself permission, or you've given permission to the greater church to ask you a lot of these questions. Don't make that conclusion to that piece. Not all of us are in a space where we can talk about the 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 work of the church and how it has affected and has had an impact in tribal communities, and we may not know that history. Um, but for those of us who do put ourselves in these spaces to lift up our history and our shared history and hopefully point into a future that we all can build together, like continue to amplify those voices. But don't target those who may not have their community experience behind them in the same way. Which leads me to that next piece is, what are the dangers of telling just one version or just one perspective of story narrative? Is that we kind of become monolithic in saying this is how all Native people are. No, there's over 577 recognized federally recognized tribes and nations within the United States, and all of us have a different story and a different relationship with the church, right? Um, and a different relationship with who Lutherans are. Now, mind you, there are several Lutheran organizations out there who are still causing a lot of harm. I mean, there's one, it's called Lutheran Indian Ministries, and it's, um, you know, their leaders have been accused of trafficking. Their leaders have been accused of profiting off of a need in our community, such as chemical dependency treatment centers, and they're basically taking these people's lives. It's horrific, right? And so we have to be better Lutherans. We have to be louder Lutherans. We have to be bolder Lutherans so that we can really tie our theology to our work and our faith in action. So what actions can we take to make a more sure we center history and stories on many perspectives? Can continue to listen and learn, and to reframe and maybe unlearn some habits that we've inherited that are problematic and may be causing harm, right? When it comes to inclusion, how do you foster an environment where people who come from different backgrounds feel safe and valued? I hope you can see us. right? And not do a one size fits all approach, especially within youth ministry. I think that's one piece where we want to have a good experience, but I was just at an event yesterday where one youth leader can really make a difference in someone's life. And there was a gentleman who was receiving an award, that, to be honest, we probably would not have heard about this guy running a race and winning until we wrote his obituary, but he gave credit to his coach who got him up at 5 in the morning, made sure that he was running, make sure that he was fed and like going to school. And this was a young man who lost his parents and um, was being raised by a sister, and it's one of those things that one person can make a difference. So how do we foster that environment? Is that we're paying attention to our students, and we may not be the right messenger, right? Acknowledge that too. Acknowledge and understand that they may need something that we don't currently have or may never have, and be okay with that. That's hard for some of us. Where what? I can't build a relationship with an individual. That was true for me as a director within the ministries, where there was just one individual I was like, I'm never going to reach them. So be okay with that. So I just wanted to highlight too, this was a couple years ago now, reparations, the city of Duluth, excuse me, the Northeast Minnesota Synod, um, in their way did land back. They couldn't actually give the land back, but they sold lands and then had given those monies to the Minnesota Chippewa tribe, which is a group of the northern Minnesota Chippewa tribes. So those pieces that we can do in a way, to honor and to be a part of the relationships around us is valuable, being seen and heard. So um, here we go. So I will close here. I know there's not a lot of room for questions, but feel free to follow me, email me, text me. I'm accessible to all of these pieces.
Any questions from anyone?
That was a lot being thrown at you as the fire hydrant opening, baptizing you with some history and some work that we've been doing.
Can you share your email in the chat, please?
Absolutely.
We lost that. And then also, this isn't as much a question as recognition, maybe. In some of my work with like in the churches and going to different, conferences that are hosted by Indigenous folks or BIPOC leaders, there are many of us Lutherans who, like you had said, kind of don't get it yet. And so some really harmful things can be said. And so I just wanted to say in this space, as people are inviting folks in, one leader shared, like, make sure you have a conversation with the or that, like, they will step up and say, can I support you in this question? If it's problematic, and you don't have to bear the weight of that. So just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thank you for that. Sorry, the local siren just came on. So other questions or comments? And I think that space is, by the way, is really important to give yourself. There's a congregation in South Minneapolis, of like kind of more white, affluent individuals. And in South Minneapolis, that's like where the Native communities, it's refugee communities, it's where a lot of like people in poverty live. And here's like this white congregation that is now building better relationship with community. But it really took the murder of George Floyd to ask that question, how do we show up? And during the demonstrations, they were, making sure they had water and sandwiches around, and started really questioning like this visceral reaction that they would have to like working with people of color. And I mean, just creating kind of like those white spaces that have that learning and that discernment around like why are we doing this. They started a book club. They're reading you know, what was the book called, How the Body Holds Trauma, and some other
Mhm.
books around that, and really questioning their white culture and what they need to learn and unlearn. So I think creating those spaces too are really important and valuable, and how you bring in then people of color and others to learn from. You know, you're creating kind of a safer environment and acknowledging kind of your ignorance, but you're also creating a space of learning. And so folks like me who come in like, no shame, no blame, like we're all inheriting this, but I hope you're doing the work, right? To have those conversations is really valuable. I'm gonna turn this off so you don't hear the siren. I hope.
Well, we're not hearing I'm not hearing anything. I don't know if you see in the chat, Lisa shared, no questions, but thank you for the presentation. It's important to hear that the Quakers have a program called Toward Right Relationship with Native Peoples that I've also learned so much from this. And they have a program coming up, and she put the link in the chat on May 31st.
Wonderful. I know there's a lot of programming happening at the ELCA as well, so definitely pay attention to what's going on. I really appreciate this time with you all. I love being on the journey with those who want to learn more of our history and what we're doing together. Um, I want to lift up, you know, my brother on here, Manuel Retamosa, and the work that he's doing at the borders. Like, really start paying attention to some of these things that are becoming critical conversations that we need to have. How are we showing up for one another, and understanding the systems that we're in. I'm often saying, who you vote for matters. They don't just represent you; they represent me over here in North Dakota and voting for my quality of life. And um, you know, I live within 100 miles of the border, which the border of Canada, and that has created some really unique um, dynamics with the federal government, you know, and ICE being in our space, and it's scary, you know, they're very scary. So, thank you for listening, for your time, and for opening up your hearts and minds to alignment and understanding, and building relationships with one another and the truth of who we are together.
Thank you, Prairie Rose. And just one more comment that came up. Margot said that she's a member of her Indigenous rights group at church and will be sharing this information.
Wonderful. Stacy, I'll send you the PowerPoint with the links, and hopefully
Okay.
you all can get that out to everyone.
Yeah, we will. So blessings to everyone as you go forth, and may we be the louder and bolder Lutherans that we need to be for our siblings in Christ. Go in peace.